How's it going, everybody? Bryan, Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio. It is August 20, 2020. Figure4online.com/WrestlingObserver.com. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here today. And yes, momentarily we will be talking about Renee Young being gone from WWE, but
not yet.
First off,
she's going to be gone in a couple days.
We got to talk about this weekend, Dave. This is completely insane. We got UFC, NXT, AEW, SummerSlam.
Yep.
The Thunderdome, whatever the hell they're calling it.
The Friday Night SmackDown Thunderdome,
yes. Yeah. Very exciting. Yeah. Well, let's start with all of them.
Well, okay. What do you think? Do you think SmackDown's going to... the SmackDown rating will be up? Do you think that's enough to make a difference?
I think the SmackDown rating the first week is going to be up a little bit because, listen, SmackDown, I think, by and large, has been a pretty terrible show. But I am very interested in seeing this Thunderdome. If I look at things purely as a fan...
For 2 hours?
I want to see what's going on. I don't know if I'll watch it for the entire 2 hours. I mean, maybe I will.
I mean, it's funny because
It's more than just a set. It's the idea is it's supposed to be an experience through the 2 hours. So if they do it the way they claim, then it's more than just tuning in at the very beginning, seeing some wacky stuff, and then, I've seen enough.
I don't know.
But we'll see.
I watched tonight... And I watched all the commercials, and it didn't hit me as much. They didn't push as hard as they did when they switched to HD. And I remember when they switched to HD, everybody was just like, oh, it's going to be a difference maker. It's going to be a difference maker. And it was like a zero difference maker.
Actually, it was a difference maker because they started doing this bullshit zooming and camera cutting and insanity.
No. I'm talking about ratings difference maker. I'm not saying show difference maker. I'm sure that there'll be a show difference maker, but I remember all that hype and oh yeah, the ratings are going to move way up now that they're in HD. And there wasn't, I don't even remember if there was a curiosity bump. There may have been a 1 or 2 week curiosity bump, but I don't even think that there was. Or if it was, I remember whatever it was very disappointing. But we'll see.
Well, that's true, but we're still talking like they went from a TV show to a TV show, just one that looked a little bit better. This is going from they're in the performance center to they're going to be in a giant building with whatever the hell all of this is. This is a big, massive change from what we've been seeing over the last several months.
At the end of the day, it's still about it's still about angles and personalities.
But what I'm saying is it's more than just we're changing to a sharper image. I mean, this is a whole new everything.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, in theory, the first week should do real well, and then it should probably revert back to normal. My gut is if they think it's going to be a game changer, they're probably going to be disappointed because in the long run, it just becomes, it's something new and fresh, but it becomes the new normal very quickly. And in the end, again, what draws is not the fanciness, although the fanciness can help, if it's used correctly. Like if the fanciness makes Drew McIntyre into a bigger star, then Drew McIntyre can draw and then you're helped. Yes. If the fanciness is just there, it's going to wear out real quick. So I don't know. But watching, I didn't feel like the hype of it was that strong to be, a big difference maker. It may help a little bit, but it's not like I expect anything like a giant number on Friday or anything like that. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. SummerSlam, SummerSlam kind of has to be a good show because they're coming back with another one in a week, so they have to have a really big angle in one of the big matches to bring the for something for the show on the 30th. So they've got to do something controversial, and it's got to be in either Strowman and Wyatt or Orton and McIntyre, because if it's any other match, it's not that's not worth coming back in a week. I don't know which one it'll be. The one thing with the controversial angles and everything is that they miss far more than they hit when they do far more than they hit on controversial angles, because you're sort of fighting the tide, because the tide is very much, no bullshit finishes, and they're still in the 80s with the bullshit finishes. And, they're kind of like, that's been one of the problems, really.
Well, here's a card for all of the shows this weekend. SummerSlam, we've got Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville in a hair versus hair match.
By the way, did you read all the Sonya Deville stuff? That guy's a frick.
Yes, definitely not good.
No. Yeah, hopefully they don't let him out. He's, that was a, there's like, here's the thing. I think that a lot of professions, there are stalker fans in football, not as, in music, in wrestling and everything like that. And sometimes they're dangerous. I don't think wrestling's got the, cornered the market on this or anything like that, but they do exist in wrestling. And this guy was, really, as the wrestling stalkers go, he was way on the deranged list. I mean, this was, I don't know. He was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do. He wanted to kidnap her, and he wanted to keep her from doing this match because he was afraid she was going to get her head shaved, I have a feeling. Because that was his idea, was to keep her, So he's completely flipped. One of the, weird things about, with Mandy Rose in the room and everything like that is, and nobody blinked an eye, nor should they. But, I remember when Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik were feuding, everyone does, that was around then. And they were both fired for, driving in a car together while they're feuding, while these two are like literally together all the time. And they're in the middle of this giant angle. And I mean, it basically tells us how far evolved wrestling, some people will hate this, but it's how far evolved wrestling has come. I remember Heenan telling me, like, when people would rip modern wrestling, and, they go, oh, it was so much better when you had the real heat and all this and that. And Heenan was just like, I was shot at, and I had people try to stab me, and he was shot. There was this time in Chicago where some guy in the building fired like 5 shots at Bobby Heenan. He missed, but he tried. And, he had fans attack him and all this, and he goes, like, no one attacks me now. Don't tell me that it's like wrestling's gotten worse. It's a lot better. And the money was better too. But, again, people want a certain thing, forgetting about, like the stuff that I saw when I was a kid at wrestling compared to now. I mean, it's so much more of a healthy environment. Then again, there were nutty fans then, and we've got nutty fans now. But, again, nobody bats an eye. Nobody's going like, oh my God, how can they do this hair match? They're actually best friends. So that was really interesting on just how much wrestling has changed.
Rest of the show, we have Braun Strowman versus The Fiend for the Universal title.
Does anyone ever get excited about Bray Wyatt matches?
Not that I know. I'm sure they're out there.
I mean, it's just like...
But even if they're out there, I'm not sure they're excited about him and Braun Strowman.
Yeah, I mean, Bray Wyatt did have good matches with Bryan Danielson. Okay, that was the one guy he really did. But my God, aside from that, and those the last two with Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman, I mean, it's like, why would you want to see another one?
We got Bayley versus Asuka and Sasha versus Asuka, with the Raw and SmackDown women's titles on the line. Yeah.
The Bayley match comes first. I suspect some storyline stuff out of all this. Asuka's going to have to do 2 matches. And I wonder if they'll ever do like 2 long matches or do like a real short one and a medium to long one. I don't know.
Got Dominic versus Seth Rollins in a street fight.
Yeah. A lot of pressure on Dominic. First pro match, and you're in SummerSlam in a significant capacity. So, what a debut.
Apollo Crews and MVP with Lashley and Shelton banned from ringside. Anybody expecting that MVP is going to win when Cedric Alexander shows up and screws Apollo Crews?
Oh, it's very possible. Yeah, I could see that one for sure.
And Street Profits versus Andrade and Angel Garza for the Raw Tag titles. And McIntyre and Orton for the WWE title. That is the SummerSlam show. Takeover, as we'll talk about a little bit later on. We have Breezango versus Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus Raul Mendoza and Joaquin Wilde.
So that's this will be
this is the dark match.
Well, it's not. No, it's not a dark match. It's 6:30.
It's a pre-show match.
Pre-show match. So the interesting thing here is that it originally it was okay. So AEW in theory starts at 6, but it's probably going to start a little later than that because of it basically starts whenever the NBA game ends. So it could be 6, could be 6:30. It'll be somewhere in there. So originally it looked like probably 30 minutes to an hour of AEW would be unopposed, and then the second hour would be going head to head with the first hour of Takeover. Well, now it's they're going to start 30 minutes earlier, so it's a lot more head to head. I don't really think that Takeover. I mean, I don't think Takeover will hurt the AEW number much, but it will hurt somewhat.
Well, if it does, it's going to hurt the 7 o'clock hour and not the pre-show hour here with this match.
No, it's something though, but it's still they're trying to throw competition out there. But yeah, no, that man. I mean, it's not much of a match. It's just it's the winners get a shot at Imperium for the titles.
We got Bronson Reed, Damian Priest, Cameron Grimes, Johnny Gargano, Velveteen Dream ladder match for the vacant NXT North American title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll probably be a great match. I would think Damian Priest should be the pick, just for something new.
Io Shirai, Dakota Kai for the NXT Women's title.
That should be very good.
Adam Cole, Pat McAfee.
Triple H said that this match is going to be a sleeper, and Pat McAfee's going to surprise everybody.
I think he will. I absolutely believe that, actually.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that it's not true. He's they can lay out a match. He's a fan. He's a great athlete. People don't want to hear that, but he is. So I don't, but again, it's his first match. He's also working with Adam Cole, who's a real pro. People think it's going to be a mess. I'm relatively certain it won't be a mess.
And Keith Lee, Karrion Kross.
Which is interesting. Karrion Kross has the great entrance, and he's got the great look. He knows his character, but it will be interesting because, the expectation of an NXT championship match and history of NXT championship matches are really spectacular matches. And I haven't seen Kross in anything like that so far. And so we'll see. I think it's a real test. I wouldn't be surprised if Kross wins the title because Kross is clearly being groomed to be the top guy. We'll see what he's got when it comes to like a 20-minute main event.
If I know anything about this company, Keith Lee is winning this match, and then they will shoot an angle to set up a rematch, which Karrion Kross will win to get the title.
That could happen too.
So the AEW show, we've got FTR versus Private Party, Elite
That's a weird one because that's a complete styles clash. I think it's a real test of FTR. If FTR gets because the Young Bucks got a legit great match out of Private Party, and a couple other guys have gotten good matches out of them. So we'll see what FTR can get out of them. There'll be some absolutely spectacular stuff, but I don't know. The match. We'll see how the match is. It could be very good.
Elite versus Dark Order.
That's Alan Angels and Silver and Reynolds. Silver and Reynolds are they're pretty good. And Angels, for a smaller, he's a smaller guy, but he can work very well. Young Bucks and Omega, they always work hard. I think this will be filled with action. Should be. It's weird because it's like if you look at the names on paper, it reads like a glorified squash match in the sense of, Silver and Reynolds have never really been pushed. Angels is Angels, and people don't even know his name. But I think action-wise, it's going to be really good.
We got the finals of the women's tag team tournament.
Yep, so that's Brandy Rhodes and Allie against Ivelisse and Diamante. Tournament hasn't been that good, although there was a match with the Brandy Rhodes and Alley match on Monday. Wasn't too bad. It was all right. But, yeah. I don't think the match will be spectacular or anything like that.
We got Darby Allin in action. They didn't say who it is yet.
Could be Ricky Starks. Because they were cutting promos. If not, it's like it'll be a squash to build to Darby Allin and Ricky Starks on the pay-per-view. Which actually makes more sense now that I think about it.
We got Lucha Brothers and Butcher and Blade versus the Natural Nightmares and Jurassic Express.
I mean, that'll be all action. I'm sure it'll be really good.
And Cody versus Brody for the TNT title.
Which should be good as well. Should be very good.
All right, so this UFC show this weekend, the Munoz-Edgar fight is the main event. Pedro Munoz, Frankie Edgar, bantamweight.
Yeah, so we'll see. This is Frankie Edgar's debut at bantamweight finally, and he's going against a real, real legit top guy. And I mean, it's generally speaking, what I've seen when you have these guys get older and cut to a lower weight class, it always sounds good on paper, and it rarely is. Because what happens is that when you get older, you lose your speed. When you move down in the weight class, you're facing guys faster than you were facing before, not slower. So the speed becomes a real issue, and you're not going to, like, sometimes you think, well, they're smaller guys, so I'll overpower them. And what you don't think is that if you're cutting down to their weight and you're weakening yourself, you weakened is probably not going to overpower them at a closer to their regular weight. Frankie's got all the guts in the world. He's older, so it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be, the one thing with Edgar, because of his name, is that if he gets a big win here, he can be in that title mix pretty quick. It's a great division too. There's all kinds of talent in that division.
And really, the only other name fight, Ovin St. Preux faces Alonzo Minifield in the...
Yeah, Alonzo Minifield's looked really good, but he's one of those guys where, it's like the typical guy where he's very explosive. He comes out and he takes people out in like the first 2 minutes and looks absolutely spectacular doing so. But if you get past those first 2 minutes, he becomes very mortal, and then all of a sudden, that's what we saw in the last fight. He looked like a guy like in his early fights where I'd watch him and go like, this guy, he's a guy who could contend for a championship. And then when he moved up in competition, all of a sudden it's just like, oh man, after 2 minutes, and he's tired and you can't knock him out anymore. All of a sudden you see he's not really that great. So, I guess the key is if he can finish Ovin St. Preux quickly. If he can't, he's in higher competition than even before.
All right, so Renee Young is on her way out.
She gave notice last week. This weekend coming up is her last weekend with the company, which will be interesting to see what role they have, or if normally they don't let people say goodbye, but we'll see. Generally speaking, on something like a SummerSlam, she's usually the head of the pre-show panel. So, we'll see if they put her on. The word is out that she's gone, so they may just decide not to, but I don't know. As far as, the reason, if you look at the timing, I think it's pretty safe to say the whole COVID thing is probably a huge part of this. The whole, again, and she wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people who got COVID, and a lot of people never got calls from the top people in the company, and several of them were unhappy, but, her situation's different. She's going to have offers. I don't think there's any question that she's going to land on her feet somewhere. Where that will be, it could be many places. So that's not, a lot of people are afraid afraid to leave. And, Her husband's got a great paying job. And again, like I said, she's going to be able to work where she, I'm not saying she can go pick, I can work anywhere in the world. I'm not saying that. But and it is a tough time, when you look at these media companies. I mean, most of them are cutting. They're not adding. But, so 2 years ago, there probably, because of the nature of everything, she probably would have more offers, in theory, than she has now. But she will get offers from places. She will land on her feet. I think it's pretty much a given, really.
Raw ratings from this past Monday night, 4th lowest of all time, I hear.
Yeah. But if you looked at the competition, I think it's lucky they weren't the lowest of all time. The Democratic Convention didn't help any. They had, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. I mean, it's pretty much the level of they did this. This is probably in the ballpark of what they're going to do with against the NFL. Maybe the NFL will beat them a little more. But yeah, I mean, I could not call it a good number, but considering what it could have been, it could have been lower. Hour 3 was the second lowest hour in history, but that was going against Michelle Obama's speech, and women dropped a lot in hour 3. More guys dropped too, but women dropped a lot. As far as the demo was up 2% from last week, from a 0.47 to a 0.48. So that's a good thing. It's still the 4th lowest of all time. It's not like it's a great thing.
Actually, we should also update the SmackDown number that we talked about on Monday, because in fact,
it actually
did
lower.
not break 2 million.
No, it was 1,940,000. The other 62,000 were a sports event on another channel that was not SmackDown. Actually, probably more than that, because SmackDown would have aired and gotten credit for, SmackDown would have aired elsewhere. So, but yeah, and it was not an 0.6, it was an 0.5. So it was the same as it's been. But even so, it was a 0.53, and they've been, so it was the best 18-49 number for SmackDown in I don't know. I mean, since June. So it was up, not in total viewers, but in 1849s. So it wasn't like bad or anything. I mean, again, it's at a certain level, but it was actually in 18-49 up significantly, even with a market preemption. So it's not, that's good, I guess, all things considered. Still, and it was one of the, I think on network TV, it was among, well, I mean, it wouldn't have beaten the NBA, but aside from the NBA, I think it beat everything, all the other sports on network TV. So for this week, in 18-49, I don't think it beat NASCAR. I doubt it beat NASCAR. It didn't beat NASCAR, but, NASCAR draws such, you think wrestling, WWE draws an old audience. You see NASCAR and golf, which draw more than wrestling, but they draw a much older audience. But, I mean, in the case of golf in particular, it's not as bad as it seems because of the nature of it being such an affluent audience. Even though their 18-49 numbers aren't that good, their ad rates are great. So, it's just one of those, that's the key of having a rich older clientele. That's not a bad thing. Having a not rich older clientele, that's not such a good thing.
So Triple H did his usual Takeover press conference, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there were questions about why they're not in the Amway Center, Patrick Clark, ratings, and the NXT head writer quitting, and he answered none of these questions.
Well, he said stuff, but he didn't give what I would call substantial answers to any of those questions.
Well, let's start with the first one. Why are they not going to the Amway Center?
I heard his answer. I could not tell you. He just said they have a great relationship with Full Sail, and they like their relationship with Full Sail. So I guess that's the answer. They like the relationship.
They're going to endanger their Full Sail relationship by going to Amway for 2 months.
I don't get it, because the thing is, it's not even going to cost them more money, because they basically are the only client in that Amway center. Nobody else is there. They don't have to move in or anything. I mean, it's like, it's all there. So it's like, it doesn't cost them any extra money, and they have all the extra special effects. So, but they have a great relationship with Full Sail. That's the answer that he gave.
Patrick Clark, the Velveteen Dream.
They say that they investigated. There's nothing there. That's what they say. He didn't, it was, I mean, you can say that. I will say that I don't think that anyone listening was impressed by the nature of how that question was answered. I mean, it was very quick. And just, let's move on from the subject. It's already been addressed. Let's move on from the subject. And Jason Powell was the one who brought it up. It was actually like the first or second question, and it was going to get asked. I'm certain of that. I actually asked a question, which was a ratings question. But anyway, I had like three questions written down, actually 4, and 3 of the 4 were like right away asked, which were in fact the Amway Center question, and one of them was also the Patrick Clark question. It's, I think in a situation like this, I mean, their thing is, it's been addressed. Let's not talk about it. They just want it to go away. And I would think that it'd be better to have an answer and go, okay, because there's all kinds of questions of like, why didn't you ask this person? And then there's somebody else now who says that they weren't asked, and you see all this stuff floating around that doesn't look good. And there's not a lot of confidence that there really was a true investigation. And because of that, I really think that it would be better. I don't know if it'd be better. It's probably better for them to say nothing, because, but if they had a real explanation, it would probably be better, if nothing else, to try to put forth a convincing argument that in fact he didn't do anything wrong. Because right now, by not doing that, it just keeps people going, and then people get mad because he's on TV every week, and they see this stuff that doesn't look good at all. And I mean, I've seen it. I mean, was it hacked? Are those people, do those people not exist? Why were some of the people who, not talked to when they said there was an investigation? So all these things are wide open right now.
He was asked about NXT ratings. What are they looking for?
He didn't really talk about it. I mean, I think my question was something along the lines of like, what have you learned by the ratings? And it's definitely like, if you ask Tony Khan and Levesque the same question, you're gonna have two completely different. You couldn't have two more completely different answers. I mean, whether that's good or bad, it's definitely good if it's Khan, because, you just, hear one thing after another, of what they learn, what they're interested in. And with Paul, it was, I mean, there was really no answer. It was, it was just, we do our show. We try to do the best show, and more talking about, we got to get fans back, and, because fans are the lifeblood, and fans are the juice and all that stuff. And which is of course true. So, I mean, as far as ratings, didn't really say much of anything. I don't know exactly what you say. Somebody else actually asked a question, and it was very much of a leading question. It's like, it was almost like when I heard it, it's like, gag me, because it was someone who said, like, some people say that like viewers are important, and some people say demos were important. It was really like almost derisive the way it was said. And it's like, okay, this person asking is like, has no experience in this business at all. And he kind of gave a non-answer again of just, because you can't go and say the demos are the most important, given that they lose every single week. But you can't say but you can't say that they're not, because then it's kind of like, well, you're going against every single thing that every single person in television says. So he didn't really answer that one. I think that the guy who asked was really hoping he would say, "Oh, it's total viewers that matter," but he could not say that without being mocked, and he could not give the other answer without really, the follow up of what the hell's wrong. So he probably gave the smart answer in that case, which is pretty much non-committal. I mean, what do you say if you're him and, in a public forum, if you're him and you're asked about ratings, it's like, we're going against this company that everyone in television thought we were going to, destroy. And now they're beating us 2-1 in the key demo. And we're, drawing 56-year-old single people, and they're drawing, younger people together. It's not like every place, every single home is a couple, but, far more than NXT. So it's like, how do you answer that question? You're the ones who know how to do wrestling better than anyone. You're the ones whose in-ring style is the superior style and all that. You're the company that, and there you are. What do you say? How do you answer the question? So he didn't answer the question, really.
And the NXT head writer?
Yeah, so Joe Belcastro is the head writer of NXT, and he also gave notice, and he's actually gone already. And I did ask about that, and he just kind of said that it's him and Sean and Bryan James, and did not say that there's I asked if there's a new head writer, and he didn't really answer that one either. But said those are three guys that are the head of creative on NXT, and so there's no changes in that sense. But the head writer is gone.
Sounds like a very exciting press conference.
Well, there were really good questions. The answers were, and the funny thing is he's usually pretty good with the answers. Not necessarily in saying anything of significance. There's a couple of things also. There's some schedule changes we need to talk about, but I thought that might be brought up, but in fact it wasn't. But it's on September, so it would be in 2 weeks. NXT will be on Tuesday, most likely, because the NHL will be preempting them on Wednesday, so they're going to be a day early. So AEW will have an unopposed Wednesday on September the 2nd, just like NXT had tonight.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. But none of that was said. In fact, the company hasn't even acknowledged that. But yeah, so that's the deal. I guess I'll do the other schedule change. So that same night, September 2nd, was originally going to be 3 hours, 2 hours of the regular show and then the countdown show. The countdown show, it looks like it's going to be 30 minutes, and it's going to be on Saturday, likely at 5:30 Pacific time. And then the buy-in would be at 6:30 before the pay-per-view, the regular pay-per-view from like 7 to 11, or probably 10:45 actually. So that is the latest update on AEW and NXT schedules over the next few weeks, besides stuff that we've already talked about. But that's the new stuff.
All right, what'd you think of this NXT show?
It was all right. I mean, I didn't think there was anything. There was nothing really blow away on it, but there was nothing other than there was one match. Let me get it. Where is this thing here? Pat McAfee was really good. I have to say that.
Yeah, he was. Holy smokes, what a promo.
Yeah, he was really good. That was the best thing on the show. There was one match that I didn't think was... the Dakota Kai Jesse Kamea match. I didn't think that was particularly good. Johnny Gargano So here's the deal with Johnny Gargano. So what you saw was heavily edited. I was surprised they showed the injury. I was kind of led to believe they would they did a match. He got power slammed on his head, which is the same injury that put Kenta out of action for a while when he was in NXT, I think with Riddick Moss or Tino Sabatelli. I know it was Moss and Sabatelli, and one of them did a quick power slam and dropped him right on his head. Actually, his one looked worse than the Gargano one, which was Ridge Holland tonight. And it was actually several minutes. They edited it to where it looked like he was shaken up for about 30 seconds, and they just continued the match. But it was actually several minutes. The match was totally stopped. They had, Triple H and Shawn and everyone in the ring. And then he was ready to go, and he went out and finished the match and won the match as was planned. So that's what kind of happened there. But they did like a second match that was a full match. So they actually edited 2 matches together as opposed to just airing the second match and used the power slam thing. I guess because they had the footage and it looked so devastating, they decided to use it.
So it was Johnny Gargano, Ridge Holland opening the show, and yes, the spot actually occurred during the inset initially, and they come back for commercial, and Mauro Ranallo is having a heart attack in the booth over this power slam, and they show 2 replays. It's power slam right under the head. It actually was, he landed on his head, but it was more like, oh my God, this guy's broken his neck, as opposed to this guy's got a concussion. I thought he broke his neck. And
it was definitely scary looking, and it was scary looking enough to where I don't know, again, when I heard about it last Wednesday, because it was taped last Wednesday, I was kind of led to believe it was kind of a scary move to where you would, have him go and do another match right away, right after, 5 minutes later. And after watching it, it's I kind of still feel the same way. It's kind of it's scary enough because sometimes you have adrenaline and everything like that, and you get dropped on your head like that, and you don't really feel it, and then the next day you feel it, and because you don't feel it, it could be something serious. So, but again, they had scripted that he wins the match and he goes to TakeOver, so that's what they went with. But it was I don't know.
It is very hard to believe the match continued, but
it did.
If you watch the match, once he hit that super kick, he was in the match for the rest of the match. He came out at the end of the show later and seemed totally fine. Apparently he wasn't
totally fine.
Well, he appeared to be totally fine. Is what my point.
Yeah, but that happens all the time too. That you appear to be totally fine and you're not.
Well, we're a week out, and he appears to be fine. And, in the heat of the moment, I would not have let him do the other match, but, it's not like he woke up the next day with a broken neck.
He does not have a broken neck as far as we know. He was hurting, but I guess the way it was described to me is he was hurting the next day, felt real banged up, but it was he felt like he dodged a bullet. It's in hindsight, it could have been a broken neck, and I think that he and many people realized that and were, in the end, very thankful it was not a broken neck, and that he is, by that standard, he's okay. But he wasn't unscathed or not hurt. He was hurting.
So the way they edited together is he takes his bump, everyone thinks he's dead, Mauro Ranallo's freaking out on commentary, and they basically have him sell for 30 seconds, and then boom, he hits a super kick out of the corner, and they almost played it up like he'd been playing possum, which was funny because if you saw the bump, it's how the fuck was this guy playing possum? He got dropped on his head in a power slam. Look, he killed himself.
The match story absolutely, and he even smiled once in the match, when he was with Candace, with the idea that he'd outsmarted everyone, that he really was faking being hurt, which is actually really clever to do.
It's clever, but it was ridiculous because...
Yeah, I know, because obviously that this was not a planned spot, and it was not one of those, Bret Hart knee injury spots that, that you're playing possum with.
Yeah, the knee injury is always you land on your feet and then you fall down. And it's I didn't see his I didn't see him, Anderson Silva's leg or anything like that. I just presume it must actually be hurt. But with this, I saw him land on his head with his neck sideways. Absolutely brutal. And then they're trying to tell me he's playing possum. I'm like, no, this guy almost died. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was a real nasty fall, yeah.
So Candice trips Holland. Gargano kicks the ropes for a low blow, hits the one final beat, gets the pin. So Gargano's going to the ladder match after getting dropped on his head here in this match.
Well, at least, let's see, at least it's he has a couple of weeks. So, so hopefully he's okay. I mean, I'm sure he's okay enough. But ladder matches, especially high-profile ladder matches, those are freaking brutal.
We had Dakota Kai and Jessi Kamea, and Dakota Kai's going for the title of the pay-per-view, and she's selling for Jessi Kamea. I couldn't even believe my eyes. And then finally she hits her move and wins, but she should just squash this girl. Should have been a total squash.
Yeah.
In a title match on Sunday. Who is Jessi Kamea?
Jessi Kamea is a Division I volleyball player who...
A volleyball player that we barely ever see on this show.
The thing with her, she's one of Retribution, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. But, whenever I see someone like Jessi Kamea, it's like, everyone's different. But she's been there for years, and she's a good athlete. And... I'm watching this, and it's just and it's only 3 minutes and all that, but she was definitely not ready for television as compared to what you usually see on television and in WWE. And again, someone who's been there for that many years, I don't want to indict the coaching because they've trained people that have made it. I don't know if it's necessarily her. I don't know what it is, but she wasn't ready for TV, even in a short, it wasn't like any big
I'm not
harm.
sure that's much of a defense, Dave, that they've trained people who have made it. It's a developmental training system for WWE, and some of them have to be called up no matter what.
No, but I mean, the point is that no matter what you do in any training session, there are going to be people who are good at this, and there are going to be people who are not good at this. Everyone progresses at their own rate, and but again, for someone who is a legitimate athlete who has been there for years, it kind of reminded me of Indy Hartwell the week before. You just see these people, and it's like, they look good, but they're just, Indy Hartwell's only been there for a short period of time, so that's not on WWE. That's your training in Australia. But Jessi Kamea has been there for several years, and I just thought, you should be able to do a 3-minute squash and not, it wasn't like she was terrible or she botched moves, but she didn't look polished at the level of someone who's on television. People are always like, and at times rightly so. Sometimes people will talk about, oh God, blah, 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 AEW. But she, this was a much shorter version of someone like that who wasn't, like with AEW, where you see some of the women and they're not ready for television, and she wasn't either.
Dakota cuts promo on Io. Io comes out. They have this big brawl. Raquel Gonzalez returns, kicks Io half to death, and then Io makes an extra comeback. I don't know why, and then Raquel kills her again. So that's the build towards the show on Sunday.
It really built up. Io Shirai against Raquel Gonzalez.
Yes.
I mean, that's like the second time that's happened. It was the same thing with Cruz and Bobby Lashley on Monday. It's like they're building up the match they're not delivering. Maybe eventually that's where they go, but I'm not even sure because they don't seem to have Raquel Gonzalez, even though they give her spots to make her a monster and everything because she's legitimately 6 feet tall and she's got good size and everything. So it's like that's what they would want to push, but. Yeah, maybe that's where they're going, especially with Io because Io's like 5 feet tall, and she's like legitimately like 6'1", so it's like a giant size difference. So, whatever.
We have a Tegan promo where they ask her about her thoughts on Candice's choice of words about her last week, and Tegan says it hurt. I've been friends with Candice for years. We have to fix whatever this problem is. And we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Over a glass of wine.
I don't think that that's going to go well.
I don't anticipate that ending in a positive manner.
No.
Finn Balor cuts a promo on Velveteen Dream. We have Legado del Fantasma versus Breezango and Swerve Scott, which was a very good match in the ring. So, Fandango sells for a while, makes this big comeback. They got all sorts of big spots at the end. So, the big finish, Swerve and Escobar are in there, and Swerve hits his finish, but the ref says you're not legal because he'd been bumped and he fell into his partner, knocking him off the apron, which this referee decided was a tag. Poor call by this referee. So then Escobar snaps Tyler's neck on the ropes, hits the Phantom Driver for the pin. So I guess they're holding off that Swerve Scott versus...
Yeah, I don't know. Especially they only have 4 matches on TakeOver on the main show, and they'd been building.
Actually, maybe they'll add it on social media because they're not in that pre-show match with Legado del Fantasma.
Right. Yeah, they weren't. Well, yeah. So I mean, it's still possible, but wouldn't it have been better to like focus on those two rather than?
Yeah, Swerve should have pinned Fantasma. I mean,
of course.
I know they like to do things differently because
that's what they should have done.
I don't know why, but.
And they should have then added it to the card for the 5th match. Yeah, I mean, it just because they've been building it up for weeks. It's not like they like built it up once. I mean, they did like 3 or 4 build-ups for it. So it's like here's the big card, and it's not like I guess they could do it on TV, but well, maybe that's what I mean. They even if they were doing it on TV though, the finish still should have been Swerve pinning Escobar, if that's the direction.
We had Undisputed Era coming out and calling out Pat McAfee. This was the highlight of the show. So McAfee comes out with 3 other guys, and apparently they're all NFL players.
They're players from the Colts.
He's got 28 years of NFL experience here with him. He says,
AJ Hawk's like a real player. I mean, he's like a genuine star.
They basically agree to send their guys to the outside so they can do this one-on-one.
So they could do a promo battle, which was...
Dude, it was great. Pat cuts his promo and he says, Pat weeks ago...
Was great. Pat was great, but I hated Adam Cole just having to stand there during this promo. It's like that goofy shit where he just stands there forever and doesn't interrupt and doesn't try to fight him. And
that's not going to be much of a promo segment if they're just talking all over each other.
Yeah, but... It's completely not real looking either.
Well, I mean, in UFC, they do the satellite interviews with the 2 guys, and one guy gets to talk, and then the other guy gets to talk.
But they're not next to each other, and it's also not like in UFC, you don't expect people to start fighting in pro wrestling. The babyface is not supposed to just stand there when he's insulted. He's supposed to snap back right away, and it makes the babyface look weak. And that's kind of been the story here, is that Cole never snaps. I mean, this guy knocked him out with a sucker blow, and now he's standing in the ring with him, and the guys just rip him to shreds, and he's just standing there, like doing nothing.
Pat says, I booted you last week. Sean was checking your vitals next to that idiot Tom Phillips. He did this whole rant about how you were being held back. I took advantage of this situation. I outsmarted you in your own house, in your own business. They try to claim I'm not special. You're the NXT champion, having wrestled all over the world. You had these people fooled. You were undefeated 400 days. I knocked your ass out in 1 minute. 1 minute! With one swing of my foot. I've never been in the ring before. I made you look like an amateur. I made $1 million in 7 different professions. And you all better hope that I don't stick with this profession. Because if I do, this will be number 8.
What professions has he made $1 million in besides football?
Must be quite a businessman. He says, we're different level of humans. You only gave me 2 weeks to train for this match.
How come he's making $1 million doing a podcast that has less listeners than us?
Well, Dave, I don't know what to tell you. 2 weeks is all I'm going to need to beat you. You'll have to explain to everybody how you lost to an outsider. You're great in this world, but I'm next level. I'm above you as a human and athlete. On Saturday, I'm going to end it with one swing of the foot. I'm going to send your face to the moon. He stole Cameron Grimes' line right there. And then everybody hits the ring. Adam Cole beats up a bunch of security guys. And then he gets in McAfee's face and says, at TakeOver, I'm going to make you my bitch. And that's the segment. I thought it was great. This should have ended the show.
Yeah, you're right. It should have ended the show. McAfee was really good, and it did make. I mean, it was as good a job of building the matches you're going to do. They did. It
made the match feel like it's a pay-per-view match, and not just some wacky little match that they decided to do.
Yeah,
made it feel very important and worthy of a spot on this Takeover card. Then we had Rhea and Shotzi versus Aaliyah and Mercedes, and
just time filler.
The tag match, Rhea and Mercedes end up on the apron. Rhea power bombs her over the barricade of the cement, which was surely a crash pad since it was a tape show.
Yeah, the way it was shot, it pretty clearly was.
And then Shotzi pinned Aaliyah, and the announcers pretty much made it sound like they've blown off this Mercedes versus Rhea feud. So I guess we'll see.
That makes no sense. They should do a singles match. I mean, one of the things, it's like Rhea's still cold. You know, they need to do more.
Well, I mean, the idea could be that they've blown it off here because Rhea's going to challenge Dakota if she wins the title on Saturday.
Dakota shouldn't be winning the title.
Well, if he was going up to the main roster, then Dakota should be winning the title.
That's right. If she's going to the main roster, they could do that. That's true.
And finally, the main event is Finn Balor.
Well, they had a great Karrion Kross Keith Lee video package. That was very well done.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Kross is. I mean, he definitely has the look, but he's got to perform at a real high level this weekend. But as far as the trappings and everything like that, he's absolutely got it.
And finally, Finn Balor versus Velveteen Dream. So they had a long match. They gave him like 20-something minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes plus.
20 minutes plus, and Dream is now a heel.
Too long.
Well, I think what happened was they figured this Dream needs to get some ring time. We're going to put him in there with Finn Balor. Like, it's practically impossible to have a bad match with Finn Balor. Velveteen,
it wasn't a bad match at all. I mean, the match was fine.
Because Finn Balor is fantastic. And quite frankly, Velveteen Dream is so much better at this point as a heel in the ring. Because as a heel, like 10 minutes of this match was him just walking and talking and flexing. And there are fewer requirements for Velveteen Dream out there being a walking and talking heel, as opposed to having to be there and be a babyface and sell and get sympathy and be spectacular and do the high spots. I think he's going to work out better as a heel until he improves, quite frankly. So Cameron Grimes comes out. He's got the North American title. He's sitting on a ladder. And at this point, 10,000 things happen. Johnny Gargano comes out, tips over the ladder. Grimes falls over the top rope, takes out the referee. Balor hits a double foot stomp on Grimes. Dream hits the Faymaster on Grimes, he's gone. Bronson Reed comes out. He goes after Gargano. Gargano backs up. There's Damian Priest. They send him packing. Priest throws a belt at Bronson, boots him. Velveteen super kicks Priest. Bronson sends him outside. Finn dives onto both of them. Timothy Thatcher takes out Finn. And Dream hits the Death Valley driver and the flying elbow for the pin. If any of you can remember that off the top of your head, congratulations. There's a lot of stuff happening right there.
A lot of interference, a lot of protecting Dream, which is the theme for the week.
They protected Dream in a match he was winning.
Yeah, but they protected him because, they gave all kinds of stuff to make sure that there was enough bells and whistles and swerves and everything like that. That's, to cover for him.
Gargano super kicks Dream after the match. Celebrates with the title. Grimes super kicks him. Priest lays out Grimes. Bronson lays out Priest and Dream. Bronson holds the belt up as the show ends. It was exciting, but, I mean, when I wake up tomorrow morning, the only thing I'm going to remember is that Velveteen won the match. I will not remember anything that anybody did. There was too much stuff going on, but I can imagine when it was over, people would be excited to see a ladder match.
The ladder match would probably be really good. So, I mean, in that sense, if you look at, the guys in there and everything like that, yeah, it was built up, but it was built up well. The match I thought was fine, but I never thought at any point the match was great or anything. It was fine. So, yeah.
All right, let's go to the mailbag here. Mailbag at WrestlingObserver.com. Actually, Yvonne Robert. We got to talk about him first.
Yeah. So we talked about Lawler. So it's the basic gist is like was there ever anyone who was a better weekly draw in the same city historically than Jerry Lawler? And we came down that they're perhaps Connect or Perro Aguayo in the late 70s. And into the 80s in Mexico City, and perhaps some of those other guys, historically Solitario and people like that, Conan, but Conan didn't have the number of years as Lawler did. I mean, Conan was just a couple of years in Mexico City. Is like when he had his big run in '91. Solitario had more years than that. But I don't know if it was as many as Lawler because Solitario died when he was 39. But as best we can tell, the best weekly draw in any city was Yvonne Robert, who was on top in Montreal for about 20 years. And Lawler was on top longer, but Lawler did not draw big numbers. Lawler probably drew big numbers from, I'm going to say 73, 74 to about 87, generally big. But even by in his best years, it would be like 8,000. And then even in the, 82 era, your average was probably about 6. And then it dwindled from there, maybe average going down to 4 or 5, which is still for a weekly city, pretty good. But And Montreal is also a much bigger city than Memphis, but Yvonne Robert was on top for 20 years, and they ran the old Montreal Forum on a weekly basis, and on matches he headlined. We don't have all of them, but we have, I think, about 85% of the attendances of shows that he headlined, and he was averaging about, over that period, I think it's just under 8,500 paid, which is amazing. So that tells you why, he's the, biggest star in the history of Quebec wrestling. Bigger than Carpentier, bigger than any of them. And I cannot come up. I mean, Bill Longston had a great run for a couple of years during the war in St. Louis, but it's not 20 years. With those kind of numbers. I mean, he, and I'm not sure he was doing weekly either. But he definitely, Bill Longston had a great run. Buddy Rogers had a great run in Chicago. But again, none of these are 20-year runs. So I would say that as, Connect was not 20 years as far as big drawing. So Yvonne Robert would be the guy who was the best of all time in that, as far as we can tell, until somebody can come up with somebody else.
Grant here says, is there any news on how many buys Slammiversary did compared to other recent Impact pay-per-views? And do you know anything about how Talkin' Shop-A-Mania did?
Nope. Don't know either.
This person here says, feels like Okada and even the New Japan main event scene has been on a slow decline for a while, and the decline has been sped up due to the pandemic. Thoughts?
Okada definitely has not been having great matches since the pandemic came back, for whatever reason. And a lot of that has to do with his opponents. I mean, Evil is doing a style that's not conducive to good matches, and Yujiro Takahashi isn't good. So that's probably a lot of it. We haven't seen him. I mean, he worked with Hiromu and it was a great match. So if he works with somebody good, I mean, as far as New Japan itself, a lot of their best guys haven't been around, but, Suzuki and Shingo Takagi are going to absolutely tear it up. And Suzuki and Nagata matches were great. Hiromu Takahashi singles matches have been great. It hasn't been as good for sure. I mean, partially, for a while, for a month we didn't have fans. That's tough. But again, Hiromu and Ishii had one of the best empty arena matches, maybe the best empty arena match. So now that fans are back, it's a different kind of fan. I mean, but they haven't had like a killer. They haven't had a killer card since the pandemic came back. I mean, the two Osaka shows, the second Osaka show, Dominion was very good, but it wasn't like super. Part of it was the standard that they had, and again, if you have Will Ospreay on all these cards, and you have some worthy Americans and everything, I think that makes up. Jay, although Jay's hit and miss, but in a main event situation, he's pretty good. And, you do have the thing. Tanahashi is injured bad. Naito is injured bad. And the layoff, I thought, would help. And in those two cases, it didn't. And Ibushi's hurting, too. So, yeah. And Okada's not having the greatest matches. So, yes, it's not as good as it was. But again, when everyone's back and, again, well, I mean, on this next one, I think Ishimori and Hiromu Takahashi should have an absolutely killer match, and Shingo Takagi and Minoru Suzuki should have an absolutely killer match. So, in the four-way, I don't know. Tanahashi and Ibushi and Taichi and Zack Sabre is always good, sometimes great, right on that border. And Evil and Naito as the main event, we'll see. The first one had its moments, but really overall was not that good.
This person here says, did the rumors of Talking Smack returning have anything to do with trying to keep Renee Young?
I don't think so. I think it had to do with it's possible given the timing of everything, but I don't think so. I don't know that factually though, because this all kind of came up all today and but she gave notice a week ago.
Is Roman Reigns still being paid by WWE? Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes, he's getting his downside guarantee. And yeah.
This person here says, I read in a 1999 issue of The Observer that Pride had wanted to use WWE talent on a pay-per-view show. Did Vince have any interest in this? Well, if he would have, they would have. So, no, he had no interest.
I don't really think that...
Tell me the story.
No, I mean, Pride always wanted to use pro wrestlers. And the idea of American pro wrestlers, they'd have paid a ton of money, but Vince didn't want to put his guys in harm's way like that. Especially then, because at that point, I mean, it's not like now. If you did it now, nobody would care. But back then, if WWE wrestlers went over there and got their ass kicked, it wouldn't be good. And, plus they get hurt, and you don't want that either. So, now they could get their ass kicked and people will, whatever. It's pro wrestling's not real anyway, but you're still going to get hurt. And that does nobody any favors in pro wrestling, is sending a guy over there to get hurt.
This person here says, I've seen that AEW has replaced WWE on several TV networks internationally. What kind of revenue does this bring in for AEW? Is it comparable to their TNT deal?
No, it's not comparable. The TNT deal is the lifeblood of the company. I mean, it's something, but it's not. The TNT deal is that's what the company, if not for the TNT deal, right now, it would have been real tough for AEW because, I mean, if it wasn't for TNT, I mean, yeah, there probably wouldn't be an AEW. I mean, because it was born off of Kevin Riley and Tony Khan's discussion in spring of 2018. If they didn't have that discussion, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be an AEW because Tony Khan's idea came from the Omega Jericho match. But he wouldn't have known where, there's so many pieces that fell in because they had to, I mean, for him to get those guys, I mean, he had to offer those guys like, Omega in particular, but all those guys, Young Bucks, Omega, Jericho more than probably anyone, JR. I mean, he had to offer those people a lot of money, and it's pretty risky to offer people a lot of money unless you've got, a pretty darn good idea. Like, you just can't, I guess people have done it before. You just offer people a ton of money and then go shopping for TV. because you don't know what you're going to get, and you're on the hook for all that kind of money. It's a very risky proposition. And yeah, Showtime was interested in everything like that later. But yeah, and if it wasn't for TNT, there would not be an AEW. That's the lifeblood of the organization.
And any update on the Forgotten Sons?
The poor guy. Which was the one? Was it
Jackson Riker made the tweet.
Jackson Riker. It was going to be tough anyway, just because of the nature of that gimmick and then how things went. But man, if I'm Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake, and they disavowed him immediately, but boy, would I not be happy, because it was like, they were going to get the tag team titles, and now, we haven't seen hide nor hair of them, and I don't know that we will. Yeah, that was an unfortunate tweet for sure.
All right, everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. New Observer is going to be out at some point tomorrow. And big weekend coming up. We got a lot of shows coming. And, of course, had several this past week as well, so check those out. And that is it. We'll talk to you again after a while.